Make sure it works. Okay.
Okay, there we go. Yeah,
It all
so
looks good. All right.
our buddy
So,
had to sort of bounce out, and that probably is a cue that we need to sort of like maybe pick up the pace a little bit. Um, I think it's hard to sort of, we came at this and we were like we really wanted to shoot for like 2.5 hours ish tops, but we're also trying to talk about a game that when you play everything is like 130 hours. Um, so
yeah. Yeah.
we were being a bit ambitious, but let's sort of like the second act. There's a series of vignettes, and let's just sort of like pause here for a minute. We talked about how lame sort of Sylvando's is because it just does feel like the most disjointed. And I know some people love like his optimism, but I felt like it was just such a yeah thing. Um, Rabs was interesting, all the little vignettes. Like I said, I think Jade's was the one I was like even more so than Sylvando's vignette. Jade's felt like really kind of like I didn't like that one either because it's like Jade has sort of like this she's so tough, so super competent, so super capable, and then she gets basically suckered into this sort of like being the brainwashed goon of some third rate monster kind of thing.
Mhm.
I don't know. It just I I didn't like that for her character. I guess
Mhm.
whatever. But is there anything in the second act that you guys wanted to sort of pause on while we're here?
Um, I mean, I'd agree with you. I think especially in the S version, when that time in between Act One and Act Two, I guess where you get to play some stuff out. The part with Sylvando was my least favorite part of the entire game. It
Mhm.
just, and especially after coming off of such a huge, like, momentous, like, end of Act One, then you go immediately into that, and it's just like a real low point of just like what is even going on? Like, what are we doing, guys? This is weird. But anyways, I did think that I thought the stuff between him and his dad was endearing,
That
although
part
it's
was
not.
cool.
Yeah, but
That part was
it's
was pretty sweet. Like,
mhm.
like not sweet like in rad sweet, but like it was sweet. As it was a little tender.
Yeah.
It was kind of like, it
Yep, I
was
think.
it a little overplayed or something, but you were going to say something, Dorian, sorry.
Yeah, I think we enjoy those kind of stories where it's like reconciliation of some of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
Um, those stories, those types of stories are always the kind that I like to see. When there's two people at odds, and then they kind of come together, which is another reason why I enjoyed Hendrick. I kind of look at
Mm-hmm.
Hendrick in one
Hmm.
sense as almost like the Apostle Paul. He was
Hmm.
persecuting and chasing after the hero and his band of you
Mm.
know dark spawns, and you guys are the evil ones and causing all this darkness, and then he eventually sees the light, and now he's, and in his own words, I am your sword, your shield, your unwavering companion type thing. So I thought
Yeah.
that was I thought that was really cool. Like,
He
Hendrick
does,
is the
yeah.
real hero here. That's
So good.
No, I think that's a really because like even Henrik was pursuing the hero and the hero's party because he really thought that you were Darkspawn.
right.
Whereas it turns out that Jasper and Mordegon, possessing King Carnelian or whatever, were the bad actors, and so he's like he trusts his friend and his king, and he's being led astray by bad actors, and then it's sort of like there's that moment of like repentance where
Hmm.
he's like, or that moment of sort of like no, he's like I recognize that my effort and I recognize what I was doing was wrong, even though I thought I was pursuing what was right, and and he becomes like, yeah, I mean he was always in my party, dude. Like
Yeah.
I didn't need
Yes.
him.
Yeah.
I didn't like, but it was like him, hero, and then whoever else. Like, I mean, Rab sort of dabbles as like a bit of a healer, so it was like,
Hmm.
but yeah, I don't know. The second act, it's sort of the restoration of the party in so many ways, and then when you get to the death of like that part where it culminates in the death of Veronica, I remember just like, I think that was sort of like the second hammer blow for me, where it was like, holy
Yeah,
crap, like
Definitely.
they
Yeah.
went there, like it would, like, because like the party gets like destroyed, and there is that moment where you're like, they're gonna like chrono trigger this bit, not the other thing. I I did actually mean to say this bit, and then I was just like, I recognized how it was coming out of my mouth, and I was like, oh, but yeah, I was like, they're gonna chrono trigger this. They're gonna kill him, and especially when it opens back up with you sort of having to play through, because you play through Sylvando's vignette and Rab's, and I think you play through Eric's first, and then you play through the heroes and storyline or whatever, or maybe do you do? I can't remember the order of the vignettes. It doesn't really matter because, and maybe you do. It doesn't. I mean, it matters for the story, the flow of the game, but like the way that they drop the hero in, like after like you, I almost thought for a minute they were going to make you Sylvando the main character of the game for a second.
Oh
Um,
wow.
I sort of
yeah,
like,
yeah. I had that thought too at first because it's just like, okay, you're playing as Sylvando, and it's like, and you don't. Yeah, I think at this point you have no idea what happens to
yeah. Well, and he's
Hmm.
the first vignette, and like that's like I
right.
said, the order of the rest of them doesn't matter. But like, I was like, because yeah, you come back and you're playing out Sylvando, and he has sort of like this thing where he almost acts like he's the main character, anyways. Like yeah, he's sort of a bit of a drama queen, and like he likes the attention. You can tell
Yeah,
that he's like the star of the show. I think he calls himself sometimes. Um,
Hmm.
and I was like, are they going to make me play as Sylvando? Like, is he the new main character? And like, so I thought they were doing like a hard pivot, and then you started regaining some of the party, and then when you do get the hero back, I'm like, oh, okay. And then when it turns out that like what saved everybody was Veronica sacrificing her life for everyone, and they even sort of reveal moments where she knew that this was probably. It seems like she knew that this was at least a possibility, and she
Yeah.
actually withheld that information from Serena. Um, and there's sort of a very touching sort of exchange that happens between Serena and Veronica that they sort of flash back to, um,
Hmm.
and then the way that Serena has to sort of move on. But there's just all sorts of cool stuff that they do in the second act, but like the sort of the reuniting, but then like the sort of almost invigorating the party, because as you go through
Hmm.
sort of each one of these vignettes, you can unlock, um, for everybody, it's sort of like story beat stuff where you unlock a new skill tree. And this is sort of where mechanically, like, it's pretty standard fare, but like these ability trees actually sort of like get kind of interesting, because whereas Serena had just been a healer, she picks up Veronica's offensive magic, and now she's just
Yeah.
a magic powerhouse. um Rab picks up a new set of skills, you know, from his master, his grandmaster, or whatever her title
Hmm.
was. And like, they all get these new skill trees. Like the hero at one point in time loses the luminary. Like when he first lives, he loses the luminary because Mordegon stole the like that's part of the whole thing. Like Mordegon stole the luminary's power or mantle, and then used it to grab the sword and destroy everything. This sort of light, corrupt the sword of light and destroy everything. Yeah, I should have led with that when we were talking about going to Yggdrasil and everything goes wrong. Um, but sometimes my brain is a really crazy place. But yeah, I guess I like the second act because it is like the biggest subversion, and then when you get to Veronica, it is, like I said, it's a bit of a hammer blow, because like
Yeah.
she was sort of like the spit like she was a little bit of spit and vinegar, and I
Mhm.
appreciated that about her. But she was also kind of like the heart of the party. Like she was like the kick in the pants that kept everybody going. She had a little bit of spunk, a little bit of fire to her, and in a lot of ways, like her passing really, and whereas Serena had sort of been very passive, all of a sudden Serena becomes more than herself. Like she's no longer sort of just Veronica's shadow or Veronica's
Right.
twin. She's like her own character. And but yeah, you basically sort of after the you regather the party, it becomes basically you unlock basically the space whale, and you sort of go around, and now you have to get the ore to reforge the sort of light. You get this sort of you see these clips, you get sort of exposed. There's a whole thing there where you get exposed to this island, and you can see clips of the original hero of light, fighting, the calamity being thing, and sort of the origin of Mordegon, and sort of like it's this game. I really think trying to do this in 2.5 hours, Josh, was a absolute fool's errand, at least for us, because the more I'm thinking about this game, Dorian, you talked about it when we first sort of like at the opening. This game is sort of about time, and like the like changing history and things like that, because sort of as you're playing through the game, if you can play the first two acts and it feels like a very full game, feels like a
Oh
very
yes,
complete game.
yes,
Mhm.
yes.
Like you
Which
do
is
that.
why, which is why I initially called Act Three post game content. So I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
I rolled the credits after Act Two. I'm
Right.
like, yes, I
Well,
finally
Act
beat
3
the
is
game.
post game credit, and
Yeah.
you don't need to play it. You don't need to play it to have a satisfying story. And actually, if I'm being honest, I actually think in some ways and we'll sort of just jump into this here now. Like the way that it ends is like you reforge the sort of light, and you and this new party sort of you ascend, you get your space whale, and you get the ability to assault the fortress of fear that's flying through the air, and basically destroy the Dark Lord and his minions. You fight, all the rights are, all the wrongs are righted, in as much as like they can't go back or anything like that. But the game ends with Veronica still dead, the Dark Lord's defeated, and everybody's celebrating and the world's being rebuilt. But then, so let's talk about the third act. Let's talk about the post game, because this is sort of,
Mhm.
you know, and Josh, I won't spoil.
It's okay. You can spoil everything. That's
Well, I
fine.
won't spoil the details, but we can I think, Dorian, we can probably talk about it a little bit in broad strokes. What happens is after you roll credits, you sort of have access to everything. Like you can actually just sort of like roll around the world a little bit, and sort of everybody's partying, and you can like visit the different towns and party with like people and stuff, and sort of check in on people. And everybody's, again, they're in the process of rebuilding. But even in the party, there's sort of this note of like, man, like kind of like, there's some cutscenes where it talks about like, the loss, because the loss of Veronica.
Right.
Well, it turns out there's this tower, the Tower of Time, or Tower of Lost Time. And if you go to it, and you can sort of like, there's a little bit of like a golden trail. There's a little bit of, not a golden trail, but there's a series of, like, there's a few things you have to do in order to be able to get to it. But you can go to the golden trail, and, or the Tower of Lost Time, man. It's only 12:15, dude. Like normally I fall apart at like 1:30 a.m. Um this is too early in the night for me to be falling apart. Um
Sorry, it's past my bedtime, but I took a nap today, so I'm good.
yeah, it's I did the same thing. So, and I've also just pounded a ton of caffeine, starting at
Right.
about 8 o'clock. So maybe the caffeine's starting to like sort of wear off, and I'm starting to crash here a little bit. Um maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's why I couldn't think earlier. But but what I will say is, like, So the third act is basically you have the opportunity to go back to this Tower of Lost Time and go back to that moment where like Jasper Jasper basically sabotages everything. Like only the hero can do it, but you can go back to that moment and sort of rewrite the game. And it changes a lot of things in a very surface way. But what it also does is it unlocks. So in the definitive edition, if you there's all those what is that the time Talkington. If you do all the Talkington side quests, there's a sub boss there's a secret boss there that you can fight, and in fighting him, like basically you sort of end up fighting the real bosses again, and then it unlocks an uber boss, and it's but yeah, it sort of basically rewrites the ending to give it a bit of a happier ending. So because you're able to go back to that point in time, and you're actually given an item that will give you the ability to fight Jasper. And so you basically stop in that fight, you can depower Jasper's force field and Veronica doesn't die, and it changes the trajectory of a lot of things. And it just gives you it sort of gives you a happy ending, but not really. But what it also does is it sort of reveals there's a lot of hidden history that is tied to the original hero of light, the original luminary. The third act, like the way I've described it though, and Dorian, it is just more Dragon Quest. It's the opportunity for you to put a happy ending sort of on the game instead of really sort of diving deep into the despair. I mean, you still sort of get there. It's just the order is a little different. So, Dorian, I mean, would you agree with that assessment, or?
Yeah, I would. I've watched a video earlier today on the timeline of the Dragon Quest games and how they seemingly it's kind of complicated, but not really. Well, no, it is, and how Dragon Quest 11 is technically like the first game in the series, the way that ties into. So I thought that was really cool how I didn't play any of the previous Dragon Quest games, but I know like the first three is like the what they call the Erdwin trilogy, and then
the Erdrick trilogy,
Erdrick,
So, you're established as the Erdrick at this like
right.
when you do all this the third act Uber boss.
And so
stuff.
with the two timelines, at least according to what I watched here, as you leave things, as you finish the game toward the end of Act 2, before going off and creating a new timeline, that's pretty much, I'm probably getting it messed up, but it's related to one of the trilogies, and the other timeline is related to the other trilogy. So, it's crazy.
Wow.
But yeah, Dragon Quest 11 is actually when you look at the total timeline of all of the different Dragon Quest games, it is the earliest in the timeline. There is a story that takes place before that, but we don't have that game.
Gotcha.
Dragon Quest 11 alludes to that story,
right?
Which is why I guess the game is called Echoes of an Elusive Age. You get the true ending. I guess if you're a Dragon Quest diehard Dragon Quest fan, I guess the way that it ends is kind of like, type of thing. I didn't catch that. It had to be pointed out via video, but
well, in the credits, it runs through all the different sort of it runs through so the Talkington stuff is has these 2 or 3 little like one shot adventure quest sort of things that you run through in each of the games prior to so all 10 games before this. and then so you're sort of like fixing the time, because that whole subquest is like there's, and that sort of puts you in the 2D mode, but it's like sort of basically some dark force has been going and sort of like messing up the timelines for all these other adventures or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I did throw some stuff out into the Discord and on Twitter, and we did get a few responses. So I thought, it might not be a bad thing to, like, I like it when people respond to us, and in lieu of a question, I thought we would sort of respond to some of these answers to my question that I posed. So I basically said, like, hey, we're going to be talking about Dragon Quest XI in an upcoming episode. What do you guys think? And we got a good bit of traction in the Discord, and John sort of threw out a whole bunch of stuff as well, and the various channels as well. But then we had some friends on Twitter. Mathman 1024 on Twitter basically said, he said that when he played it in 2020, Dragon Quest XI was his game of the year. And now, and he's, so maybe I'm the one who's in the wrong here, but he loves Sylvando, and he loves Veronica. Now, I wholeheartedly agree with that assessment of Veronica. And Sylvando did sort of like grow on me a little bit, but I just thought like he was a little bit of like, he seemed like a little bit of a flake for a while. And that like I said, that intermission sort of, that in the second act, his little vignette, I just thought was like really weird, and I didn't care for it. But he also wrote in here that he thought the crafting mechanic was much more rewarding and enjoyable compared to how it was in Dragon Quest IX. I don't have enough experience with 9 to sort of weigh in on. And he said he had most characters at level 99 when he completed the third and final act. The one thing I can say is that I had all the characters at level 99. I had everything maxed out. I platinumed the game. So
yeah,
I did all the things. But everybody was at level 99. It's a lot of like metal slime farming.
Okay.
So Mike the Pixel, it's Blaze Knight on Twitter, said he asked how fleshed out is the 2D mode in the game, and I wish I would have asked this while Wes was still on, because Wes primarily played the Switch version on 2D mode, and he could probably speak to this more authoritatively. But I answered on Twitter, and I said, like, the bits that I played in 2D were fine. It's a really charming pixel art style. If you do the Talkington side quests, you play in 2D. The entirety of that is in sort of a 2D, like sort of 16-bit style, and it looks great. It's a lot of fun, and it's very standard fare. At that point in time, it is basically, you could sort of slide it in to any of the Super Nintendo era sort of Dragon Warrior, Dragon Quest titles. So
Gotcha.
the 2D mode is good.
Yeah, I've heard that they do kind of trim down the content, though, so you run through it quicker.
It's because you're not traversing it in 3D space. The content's still there.
Okay, that's it.
It's not.
They don't cut down on dialogue or anything?
I don't think so. I think it's just basically the map, sort of, because it's being reduced down to like 16 bits, like a sort of almost like a grid-based sort of thing. It just sort of makes a lot of that, like the wandering off that you could do is sort of reined in.
Yeah. Okay.
I do wish you could switch between that on the fly, but it's not the case. That would have been nice.
Yeah. The way that you had to like go to a save point or a church and then do it, that was a little weird. Well, basically what that was is that you had to save your game. They had to translate that into a 2D file. So like it was basically launching the other version of the game. When I did a little bit of reading about that. And so it's like, you're basically they would have to, in order to do that, you'd have to run the two games side by side, which, on the Series X and S and the PS5, I don't think that would be much of a problem. But and it's not a super intensive game as far as like what it does in Unreal 4. But I think basically running two games side by side so that you could sort of like swap it in and out, because it is a pretty massive overhaul. Again, sort of even talking about like the distance on the maps, like the distance you cover sort of in between cities and stuff. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, it would have been way cooler. It's like, I agree with you, Dorian, 100%. It would have been way cooler if they had done that. It's kind of like you want to look at him and say, yeah, but you would have been cooler if you did. So sort of moving on, let's move on to some of the Discord comments, and we, like I said, we tried to get John on here, and I was actually really hoping he'd be able to join us, and so I didn't prepare quite as thoroughly as I should have, even though I knew in advance he wasn't going to be able to. But I'll sort of run through his what he's written here. So Dragon Quest XI is extremely well designed and approachable on so many levels, and I think like in a lot of ways, like this is a great, Dorian. Like you said, you don't have a ton of experience with Dragon Quest prior to this, and so this was your first one, and I think it's actually a really great jumping on point. And I think John is sort of echoing this. It's like it does a pretty good job of onboarding you. John writes here, it's the perfect entry-level JRPG. On its base difficulty, it's very forgiving, but structured. It has a very forgiving but structured difficulty curve. The gameplay gives a lot of flexibility on builds. And then it's also interesting how the bosses don't necessarily get harder for the sake of being hard, but rather they get harder to keep up with your party. It's all about action economy. It's all about the action economy. The game is hardest when you're by yourself, so you get one action per turn, and then you often end up fighting small mobs of 2 or 3 again. So the action ratio is 1 to 2 or 1 to 3. He's like, but then you get Eric, so it comes out to 2 actions per turn. At the same time, you are more likely to fight against the groups of 3. So the action economy becomes 2 to 3. Bosses at that point also come in groups of 2, and they attack once. So both sides end up taking 2 actions per turn, which is balanced. Even hard early bosses are balanced around the action economy. Dragern, the boss before Veronica, is 4-on-4 fight, with everyone getting a single turn. The Slayer of the Sands is a 5-on-1 fight, with Sylvando, the Slayer, getting 2 turns. Dora and Gray is a 4-on-1 fight with 2 reserves, with Dora getting 2 turns. Oftentimes it feels like bosses are getting multiple actions unfair, but it's actually fair for them. Which, now he's breaking down like the mechanics and the statistics behind it, which is way more thought than I would have put into it, but it makes it yeah, when he puts it that way, it's like, well, yeah, I don't like it, but yes, you're right. Especially since many bosses are on a set AI script, either a strict one or a loose one. So bosses often end up being about controlling the action economy and neutralizing the hard hits. And he goes on to say, because we alluded to it, but he did a full Draconian run. And he said, and that's how he got through the Draconian run. He's like, you end up learning what you can tank versus what you should avoid. So you build your party around that. With that in mind, the character builder is fantastic. He loves how the builder itself is connected to character development. Let me get caught up. But how you can also respec practically at any point in time. Yeah, so there's the character building tree. And again, it's pretty basic all in all. But it's kind of a standard fare skill tree within JRPGs. But it is really well done. It's
Yeah, I never respect through my playthrough, so I guess I didn't play with it too much. It felt good. And I don't know that we've said it on this episode, but I know I've said it in the past, is that I was a bit surprised. This is probably the easiest Dragon Quest game that I've ever played. Of course, I haven't played the third act, so that might get like stupid hard. at times. I'm sure it does. Um,
It can.
yeah,
It can.
yeah.
Um, well, I think too, like that's it's because like this game does feel pretty forgiving, and
Mhm.
Dorian, I'd love to sort of like hear you sort of weigh in on this, just because like you said this was your first Dragon Quest, like as far as the accessibility and sort of mechanics of the game, what I guess sort of like everything that I've read from John so far, as sort of as being a great entry level JRPG, but I also think it's just a great entry into the Dragon Quest series because on a lot of ways it is super accessible and you can sort of like you can turn up the difficulty with the draconian challenges. Um, but what do you think in sort of regards to some of this, Dorian?
Mechanically, I mean, yeah, it's. I think for me, it was a lot of how can I put this? I knew it was it's a JRPG and you can kind of so it's not like my first JRPG obviously, but it is my first foray into Dragon Quest. So
Mhm.
there was a lot of things that are traditional that you can see like, oh, okay, yeah, I see that kind of basic turn-based battles, even though it's in a 3D space where a lot of RPGs nowadays are going more action
Mhm.
based. Um, and I can appreciate that they kept some of the, I guess, 8-bit sound effects, if you will. Like, when you win, when you win a battle, it
Yep.
has that, it's like, okay, I haven't played any of the old Dragon Quest games, but I can tell that's kind of like an old 8-bit sound. But anyway,
Yep.
um,
Yep.
yeah, so just with traditional JRPG story beats, standard affairs, solving protagonists, what have you. Um, the game wasn't incredibly difficult. I don't think there were a few parts that were difficult. Just I think, and it's like later in the game, to be honest.
Mhm.
I did struggle with at first. I struggled with the Mortigan. Um, I had to because a lot of the battles I kind of put into auto battle like later
Mhm.
on in the game speed
Yep.
and I kept losing until I changed around a few things and then great they
Nice.
defeated him for me so um but I see even in that it was an element of strategy like okay
Mhm.
this keeps happening and I keep losing I need to put this character here, change out a few things, and so forth, and then see how it plays out. Uh, the Yeah, so I mean, I guess all in all, it is it's not the most difficult game in the world. I got into this game for the story, uh, just to enjoy like a good JRPG, enjoy the presentation and everything. Um, Yeah, good time, long time, and
Yeah.
if you buy this game, you'll definitely get your money's worth. I mean, I liked it
Yeah.
so much, I
Yeah.
bought it for on sale for $15 on Black Friday.
Oh,
Even though
nice.
even though I'd been playing it on Game Pass, I'm just like if it ever goes away, I have the disc.
Yep.
Uh,
Nice.
yeah, yeah, but cool RPG, especially. I'm trying to get my wife to start playing RPGs. I probably
Okay.
won't start her with this one, but just because you get to it's a story you get to read. It's not reaction based. It's strategy based. So it's
Mhm.
right out. But
Mhm.
yeah, good time.
Nice, nice. Yeah, the opposite end from 100%ing Ori and the Blind Forest.
Well, I was gonna say if she can 100% Ori in the Blind Forest, she could probably, I think like the biggest difference there is just like you gotta put in the reps in a different way with Dragon Quest. Like you just got to be willing to like sit through all of it. That's in a lot of ways because a lot of it, yeah, you can just like you mentioned, like the auto fight, like the auto battle.
Mhm.
Hmm.
I auto battled through most of the game. I mean,
Mhm.
Hero on two-handed swords is offensively just a monster. I
Yes.
mean,
Great sword. Yeah, I use that too. Yeah.
yeah, and I never took him off of it. Really, no, that's not
Hmm.
true. I at the very end, there's an it's not really an exploit, but you end up reforging the Sword of Light, but then there's a way so you can basically have two swords of light, and I had him dual wield
Oh.
the swords of light, the
Hmm.
Mhm.
swords of light. Um,
Well, a quick question on the mechanics tip. I'm pretty sure you did, Nate, because you platinum the game. But
mhm.
Josh, did you? How much did you use the forge or whatever it's called? You know, where you
Yeah.
The
was
fun size
I
forge.
the fun size forge? Yeah,
There you go.
I barely used that.
Oh,
Um,
really? No, I used it fairly often whenever I would get some new stuff. Just because I do play a lot of JRPGs, and actually, it's really the older ones that kind of instilled this in me. Is I do tend to, if I'm not searching like all of the map, I'm at least like pushing up against areas where I think secrets will be.
right.
And so, like, I was constantly reading all the books and stuff and a lot of them I didn't like actually read. I just wanted to see if I got anything from it, like an item or I learned how to create stuff or something like that. Um, so whenever I would accumulate a number of a new, ability to forge things, then I would go into the forge and mess around with it for a while. And so I was getting a good probably like 60% of my armor from the forge rather than from the towns. So I did use it primarily for armor, a little bit of weapons too, but weapons mostly came from the shop. But it wasn't. I didn't use it for a ton of things, but I would dip in and see if I could make anything better than what I currently had equipped. So, I
Well,
did use it fairly often.
if you basically craft the weapon at the +3 version, usually
Yeah. Mhm.
it is a better version of anything you can buy. Um,
Hmm.
Hmm.
so I was frequently doing that. Yeah, yeah.
Nice.
Like honestly, I crafted way more than I bought. Um,
Okay.
because And when I would buy items, I would go and retool them until they were a +3, because most of the time, what
Gotcha.
they're if you keep up with the books, and again, you do like the +3 crafting and recrafting and all that stuff, the gear sort of outpaces a lot of what you can buy most of the time. So
Nice.
the gear that you can make. So yeah, I don't think I don't think you have to make everything for the trophy. I don't know what the achievements are like. I would imagine they're comparable. Um, but you have to make a lot of items, a lot of different items.
Hmm.
So that's the other thing. Um,
Gotcha.
but yeah, and in order to unlock the best possible weapons for everybody, you actually have to find some books and do some crafting.
Mhm.
So yeah, the fun size forge is neat. Yeah, I mean, and I think that goes back to sort of Mathman's comments about like the crafting system in this game was actually pretty good. It was better than, I mean, there was a crafting system in Dragon Quest 8. But one, it's been like, I don't know, 15 years since I played that in its entirety. So yeah, I don't remember it being especially awesome. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think and we might as well start to sort of like land the plane here a little bit. Um, just sort of closing thoughts. I guess you know, like I said, I think we engaged in a bit of a fool's errand, and I probably should have like streamlined some of my thoughts earlier. But this game is massive. It's like 130 hours for completion, and there's so much to do, and it really is a pretty compelling game. I like, and maybe it just sort of speaks to like the cynic in me, but I would say like to somebody who is picking this up and playing it, like if you want the happy ending, if you want to see like evil really get vanquished, yeah, you're going to need to do a third playthrough. But if you're okay with a little bit of bittersweet, the first two acts they're gonna treat you just fine. Playing through and just rolling credits is going to feel like a pretty satisfying, although like I said, it's a
Yeah.
little bittersweet kind of story. And like I said, I've got a fairly robust history. And again, I haven't played to completion. Like Wes has probably got more Dragon Quests under his belt than I do. And not probably, he does have more Dragon Quests sort of knocked out than I do. But Dragon Quest 11 is like, it's my favorite because I think it takes strengths from everything and really just delivers one banger of a package. But
Hmm.
Dorian, sort of what like any sort of closing thoughts on the game? Anything that you wanted to sort of share and that we didn't work our way around to?
The music. Um, I thought the music was fantastic.
Mm.
All the orchestra. Wow, starting to be like you. I can't talk. Um, the all the orchestrated music. I will be honest. I switched it over to MIDI, and I thought it was terrible.
Okay.
Probably because I had been so used to listening to the orchestrated soundtrack.
Yeah.
Uh, and part of me actually thought like, how old is this game? It
Hmm.
came out on PS4 the first
Yeah.
time, right?
Yep.
I'm like, why are they using MIDI tracks? I mean,
Hmm.
Skyward, a game like Skyward Sword on the Wii had fully orchestrated music, so that threw me off a little bit. And was like,
Yep.
uh, I thought this was a PS4 game, but okay, whatever. Um, but anyway, yeah. No, this game is definitely a if you're an RPG fan, especially a JRPG fan, definitely play. Um,
Hmm.
you will you won't be hurting for content, that's for sure. Um, yeah, I recommend anybody who's into any sort of RPG, just yeah, I mean, pick up a game, play it. It's on Game Pass. It's on
Mm.
PS4, 3DS. Uh, yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to Dragon Quest 12. So
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. How about you,
Yeah.
Josh? Any sort of like closing thoughts as we sort of wind down? Anything that you wanted to mention that I neglected to bring up?
I don't know that it's anything new. The game is done so well, and I feel like I've said it multiple times already, but just the way it does take you to some places that are unexpected, and it stays well written even in those moments. In that transition from Act One to Act Two, and like the world goes to pot. Because there's this dark ruler over everything now, and people are like dying all over the place, and it's hard to live, and people are really like dour and don't care for each other because they're just focusing on surviving. Like you see what that does to your party, and some party members frankly are more like you would expect from a JRPG, where they just fight against that, and they're like, no, we're going to make the world a better place. But then some of them, like, you see how it affects them, how ragged they are because of it. So I do think that it's there's some good writing here that's more than just kind of your standard, what you would imagine like a fantasy adventure to be. Like, here's the low point, but then it just goes right back up. Culminating with, I think, what you talked about earlier, Nate, in the death of Veronica. Like that I agree, that part did hit me, because I did not expect them to do that, because yeah, she was kind of the loudmouth. It's like you would think Serena would be the one to die, because she's more quiet, more reserved, but like she seems more noble You know what I mean? Like she seems more like stand up where Veronica's got some hard edge to her. But the fact that she was the one that she was like, no, like I really care for these people, I care for this world, and I'm willing to like sacrifice myself in order to make things right. Was really impactful, I thought. So yeah, a lot of standout moments. We talked about Hendrik. So I think because of those really like those moments of writing, we kind of passively mentioned. I don't think I love how Toriyama's art looks in this Unreal Engine 4. I think it looks fantastic. Um, so it looks good, it feels good, it's well written for the most part. There's some tropes in there as well that you kind of gloss over. Yes, Sylvando wasn't my favorite, but he was endearing at points for sure. So I didn't dislike him as much as I thought I would. I'll say that.
Yeah, I
Um,
think that's actually, now that we've sort of talked about it a little bit, I think that's where I end up landing with him, where it's like my initial sort of like rub on him is like, I don't really care. But he
mhm.
has enough sort of like redeeming moments where I'm like, yeah, you know what? Like, I don't hate him, but
Right.
I do think he's the weakest character. I think like that. I think
Yeah.
it's a great
Yeah.
cast, but like
Right. Right.
he just feels like, and I know that maybe that's just like when you have Sylvando versus like Henrik, I'm like, pff, like please, like one of
Yeah.
those dudes is a G, and
Mhm.
it's not Sylvando, like
Yeah.
but. And again, he's got his own charms, and I think like his arc with his
Yeah.
dad is really like, you brought that up, Dorian, but like his arc with his dad is really sweet, the reconciliation, and
Yeah.
it's really a kind of a tender moment where I think honestly like it's like kind of one of those, I think sort of what you guys are both maybe, or so, but like I think one of the things that in talking about the writing is because even though this is a story and there's all these little vignettes, it tells us truths about life. Like, I mean,
Mhm.
all three of us are sons. Like, and how many times have we sort of had that moment with our father, like where it's like, have I disappointed you? Like, and maybe like Silvano's dad was not perfect, but like, I did love the challenge he sort of like threw down. He's like, you left home and you said you were going to make the world smile. Have you done it yet? And like, he's got like a little bit of an edge to him. He's like, he's like a man's man kind of dude. And like,
Mhm.
but like, he's like sort of holding his son's feet to the fire and saying like, you said you were going to do this thing. Now go do it. Like, I
Mhm.
believe in you. Go do it. And I think like, we've all sort of like that's the thing that's like sweet about, that's the thing that's really cool about Sylvando's story. I
Mhm.
think, and just like with Henrik, like there have been times probably in each one of our lives where we have done wrong in the pursuit of good. Like we've been trying,
Mhm.
like
Oh
we
yeah.
think
Oh
we're
yeah.
on the path of righteousness, and then when we look back and we see the train wreck, and like it's so easy to fall into despair. And this is why I love Henrik more than most characters, is because like, but he's like, no, like I'm going to press on, and briefly he's sort of like, he sort of stands in for the hero, and that sort of the beginning, that second act where like
Yeah.
he is really like the protector of the survivals, the survivors at Cobblestone. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, and just even with like, looking at all the like, Rab's willingness to sort of like basically sacrifice himself, sort of like put everything on the line just for a chance to sort of like fight the darkness. His like,
Mhm.
he goes to the mountaintop, and like he goes into his like dream trance thing, and like, he sheds all that weight,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
Mhm.
he's like really dope, really weird looking. And even like, and that's kind of why I do get angry about Jade's vignette, is because like I feel like hers is just like adding insult to injury, where it's like, I mean, I guess we've all been duped at times, or we've been forced into situations that compromise us. But I don't know. I think that's part of like, is the writing perfect? No, but it's good.
Mhm.
It's I'd say it's above average.
Oh yeah,
It's very good.
yeah.
I think it's
Mhm.
it's it's a well paced, well executed. Like I'm not gonna lie. Towards the very end of my time with it, like the 130 hours I spent, I was pretty tired. Like I was kind of like I
Yeah.
was I was ready to be done. Like the Uber boss, I cheesed the Uber boss battle because I was like, I'm not gonna worry about being like tactically savvy. There's like an ultimate, like one of the pet power moves that you can use, which yeah, but yeah, I don't know. I love this game, and like
Hmm.
as much as I enjoyed talking about it with you guys. Sometimes I feel like we probably could have talked for like 5.5 hours. I think we're pushing 3.5 at this point, so it is just time to sort of like wrap it up. What I would recommend to any listeners who have still made it to this point, if you're still listening, if you're really interested in sort of I think a pretty solid deep dive and exploration of this, I would go check out Into the Aethers, and I know I've mentioned them a couple of times, but they do a deep dive on Dragon Quest XI that I think is really very good. Um, I think actually, as a general
Nice.
rule, that podcast deep dives, like when they drill down on a particular game, they're very good. Um, so, but
Nice.
that being said, I think it's time to start really just landing the plane. Dorian, wanted to thank you for joining us.
Yeah,
Wanted
man.
to shout out Wes for giving us some of his time. Also, wanted to
Hmm.
shout out John. Like I said, our buddy John, who I think he wanted to be here, but just because he got a baby. And he said he gets a little. He probably would have been like super excited in talking about this and might have woke that baby up. So
Yeah.
that's
Pretty
that,
important.
that's a pretty important. That's a a pretty good call there. But and I wanted to thank everybody who sort of wrote in and had weighed in one way, shape, or form on some of this. Just but Dorian, before we go, I mean, you're not really on social media, but you are in our Discord, right?
That is correct.
So if people want to get a hold of you, they need to come to our Discord. Um, or
Yes, I am there under DPT, BASSMENT, DPT Basement. Yeah, so I'm on Discord, every so often. And of course, under the same name, you can find me on PSN or Xbox.
Sweet.
outstanding.
Nice.
Josh, where can they find us?
Yeah, if you guys want to, inform us how wrong we are about Sylvando, there's tons of ways that you can reach out. Our email address is thebacklogbreakdown@gmail.com. On Twitter, our handle is @bbdowncast. We do have an Instagram. It's just the Backlog Breakdown, and then a link for the Discord will be in the description. And then finally, we have our Facebook group, the hashtag Backlog Book Club on Facebook. And on the internet, if you want to get a little bit more personal, I generally go by Broccolope, and Nate goes by
Nate_McKeever.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm,
Well, I think, whether we have done right by Dragon Quest 11 is a question for other people to sort of answer. But I feel like
mm.
we have done as much as we can tonight, gentlemen. Again, dear listener, if you are still listening at this point in time, well then, I think it's fair to say there's only one thing remains, and Josh, that is until next time. What should they do?
Guys, keep beating down your backlogs, and we'll keep breaking down the benefits.
Yeah, sounds right. Good
There was a
night.
there was a satisfying ending, but if I could turn back time and rework a few things, I probably would.
Post,
I
post,
see what you did there.
post podcast content.
What's that?
Post podcast content.
Oh
Post
yeah. Oh
podcast
geez.
content. Yes. Yes, I love it.
Ugh.
Um, well, It's one. Well, you're East Coast too, aren't you, Dorian? So
Yeah.
I don't know what time you got to get up for church. I don't have to be up till like 9, so I can still get a full 8 in. But
Oh, nice.
yeah, I'm willing to just sort of call this a night, especially since this is sort of an auxiliary episode. Dorian, thank you for your time, sir. And
Thanks for having
Yeah,
me.
man.
yeah,
So
Good times.
we'll catch
I'll
you.
probably try to join you guys again when we do Portal.
Sweet.
Yeah,
So,
actually, since you got that, I haven't posted it yet. I need to. I don't know if I posted that in the book club. That is, I'm looking. I have a note I wrote for myself. October 10th is when that's we're gonna hit that. So
Sweet. I'm pretty sure you did. I'm pretty sure you
I
announced that in the Discord.
I try to, but I don't always remember to do that stuff. So
yeah, man, you
yeah,
did. You did.
Okay.
so
Not crazy.
yeah, we have potentially 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 recordings in October. So we are basically recording every Monday, I think.
Nice.
I mean, it's super cool, but it's also like, ugh. I think like what is nice is that when we do the 2 week stuff, right? It gives us space to sort of like do other things
Mm-hmm.
and have a little bit more to talk about. Also, yeah,
Maybe there'll be shorter episodes then. I don't know. I'm
unlikely.
just kidding.
I I doubt that. I know us and our propensities. So,
Based on our track record.
but all
Awesome.
right, why don't we just call it a night, Josh?
All right.